Hey, everybody, it's Ken McElroy here, and I'm very, very excited for this show. I'm here with my friend, Anthem Blanchard. Hey, Anthem.
Hey, Ken, how are you?
Good, good. So, Anthem, as you can imagine, I get peppered with questions, obviously a lot of real estate questions, which for me are easy. And I know when you have a real estate question, you lean on me. You text me and we email.
I'm humbled and grateful. Thank you for being available. And I don't know how you manage to be so accessible, given all that you do and all you help. And it's amazing.
Thank you so much. And so recently, everybody's talking about Bitcoin. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But also, there's a lot of talk around gold and silver. And so what people don't know is obviously there's no that we can all know everything. And so you have to be experts in different things. And so when I have a gold or a silver or a Bitcoin question, I turn to this guy. I turn to Anthem. And so I'm really excited that you're on because, so we met years ago and we've been friends for a while, and a lot's changed since back in that day, right? So why don't you start with just a little bit about yourself and kind of talk about your journey.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I was born in the United States, so that was lucky. I was a white male, so that's pretty lucky. I got adopted at a few days old, so that was pretty lucky. And my parents just showered me with love, and they had the good fortune and wealth to be able to adopt me. So it kind of taught me at a real early age that wealth buys freedom. And it kind of so happened that my parents got into helping people protect their wealth and their freedom through helping make it easier for them to buy gold, mainly, and some other precious metals like silver too, but mainly gold, and effectively help, protect against confiscation of wealth, really in the form of taxes and, governments is printing currencies because they can to cover their debts, right? And so just debt on debt, right? So which I think you do such an incredible job teaching people about the system and how to practically prosper through it. And so, really, I think now we're getting into an era where we've evolved and everyone has the ability to be wealthy, and it's an access as opposed to an ownership. And, gold really, I think my parents taught me this idea of freedom. And I think that's kind of what I'm so grateful for. My parents were really famous for helping to make gold ownership legal again for U.S. citizens to buy, which for 41 years from 1933 through 1974 was illegal, believe it or not. And you couldn't buy gold coins or bars. So people were intimidated, and I actually have like a little homage to my parents, my dad, especially around here. And, really just humbled and grateful for them. And, helping to make our freedom to be able to buy the 79th element on the periodic table. So that's pretty kind, and it's not even radioactive. So, it's real nice.
Well, so, what I love about you is you're so humble about all this. So I want to dig in to your parents because, and, not for the whole show, but just in the beginning, because I don't know that people really, truly understand how powerful and how visionary, and you've come from a series of this because I read up about your grandfather too. It was kind of the same way. And so for those of you who don't know, Anthem's dad is James Blanchard. And James Blanchard, a lot of people will say, and I'll quote, I pulled this up. And as we know, FDR had banned private ownership of gold in 1933, and your dad is actually widely known as the one who reauthorized private ownership of gold in 1975 by lobbying with President Ford. Right?
You got it. I mean, he took on the government, right? I mean, companies like IBM and Microsoft have tried and have failed, and yet somehow
he did it.
Dad did it.
Yeah, he did it. I you've got those pictures over your shoulder of your dad standing with a bunch of presidents, and so guys, like Anthem grew up in a home that was basically trying to educate people. Oh wow, check that out.
Yeah, that's President Reagan wishing my father happy 50th birthday. Let's see if I can connect.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't that neat?
So, all right. So you obviously grew up in this under this incredible leadership as a family, and you know, so what they've been trying to do the whole time is protect people's rights around money. And I loved what Reagan said about taxation. You know, he basically said it basically stills wealth. And what your dad did was fight for all these rights back in the day. So you want to talk about some of the highlights of, you know, of your father and your parents, because they changed the way, you know, we all do business, and obviously getting gold legal again and people being able to buy it and to own it. That created, you know, kind of where we are now. And so when I met you first, we were talking about gold and silver, and that was at the time, that was your primary company, and doing all the stuff in New Orleans and teaching and all those kinds of things. And now it's kind of evolved into Bitcoin. But before we get there, I guess the point is that your family has been super visionary on preserving people's wealth, trying to educate them, and as you said in your intro, just trying to help them be ahead of this, you know, the printing of the money and the inflation that we're about ready to see. So let's talk a little bit about your dad. What are some of the high points that you think about when you think of him?
And thank you, Ken. It's a long time. My dad passed away 21 years ago, and I miss him every day. Like, you know, we all do, our loved ones. And, you know, really, I think what he instilled in me is a fearlessness to follow your passion. And, you know, passion is always love. They're really the same word, I think. And so, you know, and if you don't know what your passion is, I always say, stay curious about being passionate and ask questions, simple questions to people like yourself or everyone's experience, and way more things than any of us could ever be, right? So asking questions, you get that knowledge out. You get some free tidbits that avoids having to suffer oneself to learn the mistakes, right? I mean, if possible, even if you can get 1% or 0.1%, you know, of 100%, that's going to help you, right? You keep adding those little 0.1% up, and before you know it, you know, you add 1,000 of those up, now you're 100% ahead of the next person that doesn't do that, right? So, you know, stay curious is what I always suggest to everybody. I mean, I was adopted into privilege. I was born into privilege, really. So it's easy for me to say these things. I do have the perspective because I've lived a very wide variety life. I've been very privileged to have been able to have done that. So the introspective allows me to have perspective to share these like very simple kind of qualities that I've just noticed. I'm like a little bit like a Don Quixote. I grew up around extreme visionaries, my parents. So I have the ability to identify visionaries like you, or somehow you identifying me, I don't know. But all these visionaries just surround us. And it just, I mean, we're now an enterprise software company. We're dealing ransomware-proof software. How we got there is a bit of a miracle. We started to innovate. We built basically ways to make our gold and silver retail products more trustworthy. We built an inventory software that allowed tracking of data down to Bitcoin, which is the world's strongest clock. That's why it's, you know, crazy $500 billion speculation, but not really crazy because it's the world's first trusted record keeping. And, you know, trust is arguably worth a 1 and everything else is maybe a 0, arguably. So, you know, maybe really the valuations are super low right now. If you really peel back the onion and think about, we don't even really know in derivatives, you know, what is really the US government even backstopping legally. I mean, 12 years ago when the onion kind of got peeled back, it looked like with AIG, it was maybe close to $2 quadrillion potentially. So there's 2.1 quadrillion keys of Bitcoin. That's what people buy. They're literally like keys to a house or a car that allow you to like open the door, start the engine, if you will. And you bid these keys like you would an auction, basically dollars at an auction to buy art or, you know, something, right? Basically, you bid these keys like a casino, right? You know, you bid the keys, you know, like at a poker game, basically, right? And if you bid enough of these keys in this blind auction, you get to write a little piece of information in this strongest record keeping in the world. And that's literally all Bitcoin is. Everything else is noise.
Well, let's, by the way, for those of you, please do jump in and Google James Blanchard, Anthem Blanchard. You'll see some of the things your family has done, Anthem. You know, one of the things that I thought was interesting, as I remember last time we met, you were saying that one of the big influences of your father was Ayn Rand. And I don't know if you guys know who Ayn Rand is, but if you don't, Atlas Shrugged. She wrote a whole bunch of really, really good. She was a visionary, so a lot of the things in her books are showing up right now.
I think Ayn Rand is overall a pretty, astute, brilliant person.
For many of the listeners, I want them to go out and take a look at some of the writings and the teachings from back then. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. But what I want to talk about today is Bitcoin, because for many, it's very confusing. And, so one of the things I know, Ray Dalio came out recently. I don't know if you saw, I follow him. I really like his stuff. So he challenged cryptocurrency, and he said, I challenge the cryptocurrency community to educate him about Bitcoin. And so all the stuff's coming in right now.
Like anything in life, I say, you don't really care unless you have some kind of level of commitment. So I say, start small, right? And these keys you're speculating, we're all speculating. This is like the next way that the internet's going to grow and do all the things that we really desire from it, right? The goods, the services, the experiences, right? The social media, the video chats, right? The interactions, all the things that we really love about it. We're going to see way better, cheaper, faster by distributing access.
So that's actually one of the questions I want to ask you is, do you feel like this is a market response to the government's mismanagement of our money? Because that's what it feels like. It feels like after we started printing all this, and we've been quantitative easing before, but for whatever reason, it's a lot more now. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, but so here we are. And so it feels like people are starting to look for alternative measures of, holding their wealth. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I think it absolutely 100% agree with you, right? That this is definitely a reaction, right? I mean, this is, our wants and needs of enjoyment are of goods and services, of how we get, enjoyment, are being totally undermet right now. And I'd argue have been undermet severely for 12 years since the last bailout of the system.
So one of the things that concerns me personally, even though I do have some Bitcoin, is the physical side of it. Like a dollar you can hold, or gold. I have gold coins and silver coins, and I can physically bring it. And I know this is kind of one of those things that a lot of people talk about. It's kind of out there. So can you address that right now? Because I think that's what holds a lot of people back. They're like, well, they don't quite understand it.
One of the things that makes Bitcoin unique and valuable is it created the world's first unique digital asset. So before Bitcoin, like to have something unique, like a collectible, right? Like it had to be physical, right? You couldn't do something digital. You could copy, impossible to prove there was ever an original. You always had to have a physical copy. It's like why movie companies or record companies would always have all these physicals everywhere. And even still today, the physicals are better than the digital because the digital is easier to corrupt. And so basically, like part of this concept, the neat thing is that you can represent something digitally, physically. The way I kind of think of it is kind of like, it's like being able to have your own serial number, like on a dollar bill. Like if you pull out a bill right now, you'll see there's numbers that the treasury prints on those things, right? So when you're buying these tokens, you're buying, again, these software keys. The keys are a requirement to access Bitcoin software. It's the only way you get there. And that creates a barrier of entry. It makes it really expensive to try to quote unquote attack this software effectively.
Right. So I think that's one of the things that I hear, especially if you're 40 plus, is Bitcoin secure against hacking, and how would you answer that?
Yeah, the network is secure. Your keys are not.
So let me ask you a question. So it blows my mind that something digital could now be defined as money. And would you say that was basically trust?
Well, I'm very radical. I look at Bitcoin as barter. So the keys provide direct access to the world's strongest record keeping, right? Money is a third party proxy of value. Even if it's not a quote unquote government defining it, there's some general consensus that has to be defended, even if it's only psychological.
So let's talk a little bit about. I was at dinner the other night with Kiyosaki and George Gammon. And so one of the topics that came up, which I thought was really interesting, was what happens if the government gets serious about getting in and stopping crypto and getting involved in crypto and becoming like, a competitor? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of discussion around this. Can you shed some light on that?
Now we're figuring out, how do we apply this trusted record keeping into our marketplaces? So we're going to basically, by commercializing Bitcoin as a society, right, we're going to basically bring trust to commerce, and we're going to make marketplaces jobs for the first time 100% possible, in a voluntary way. So we choose to participate, nothing gets taken away, our freedoms, our time, our assets, our equity, whatever, nothing gets taken away, because it's no longer a threat vector to someone else's wealth. Now, fortunately, we live in an era, we're so lucky, where we're going to see evolution instead of revolution. That's
Right.
why interest rates are at 5,000-year lows. That's why we're not seeing hyperinflation, right? We're literally seeing an irrelevancy of the old system of money, an irrelevancy of the old system of marketplaces, because they no longer serve us.
So where are we, like in this, in this run? Because a lot of people, obviously, I'm not trying to have you predict the price of Bitcoin. What I'm trying to get to is, where are we? Is it a 100 chapter book and we're in like the first few chapters, or are we, somewhere along? And do we look? Does this look like it may dethrone the U.S. dollar as the world's currency at some point? And is that like 50 years? Is it 20 years? Is it 100 years? What's your crystal ball say?
I think conservatively, we will see 1,000x from where it is today, which is about 33,000, I think, ish, 35,000, let's say 30 to 35,000. I think we'll see it around 30 million by 2030.
Is it based on the number of people coming in, which pushes it up? And is that what you mean by it's a fixed number and it's math, and the more pressure on it, kind of like the stock market right now, the Fed's dumping cash into it and pumping it up while all these businesses are closed? Is it like that?
It's sort of like that. It's like, why is gold at 10, plus at least a trillion, dollar market cap, and, even way more than Amazon or Tesla. And we value growth more than anything in terms of equity. So, the reason is lack of certainty, right? We've had to value an element on the periodic table that is non-radioactive, that's very low melting point, which is still a great, awesome qualities to gold, no doubt. However, it's a credit-based instrument. The credit is baked into the price, and sense of the credit is the price over the commodity of gold represents the credit of the money. That's part of the masking, and it just becomes unobvious because we've always thought of barter to be impractical, and it always has been. Bitcoin created triple book entry accounting. So for your finance and accounting nerds out there, we've had double book entry accounting for centuries now. That means we have, two entries, one side of the book, the other. Typically we call it a debit or a credit. And then we typically have some group of people come after the word, or groups of people, days, months, weeks, years, to do what they call an audit of some sort, or types of audits. And that basically is going back and trying to do like forensics, basically, and say, hey, I want to match up. This is a bank statement. This is an order slip. How did this get there, right? It's like impossible though, right? To do 100%, right? So Bitcoin created the world's first triple book entry accounting. So both sides of the book enter, and then the audit happens immediately before the transaction saves 100, all the way, basically. The cement hardens, so to speak. So, and then once that happens, basically another layer of cement gets added, about every 10, 15 minutes. The time varies based on market demand dynamics. So there's all these creative ways to basically access Bitcoin record keeping without having to access it directly, like aggregate kind of proxy layers, kind of like hiring a class action attorney, right? Or, Groupon, right? Basically, or like one representative to get you into deal flow, right?
Right. Yep.
So same kind of concepts.
So we're running out of time, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about, thank you for walking everybody through some of the basics. What's happening in the industry right now? What should people be looking at right now as they start to enter? I know I agree that they should come in at $20 and just kind of get familiar with it. But what can they look at? What can they do to see some of the potential issues that might be coming their way that they can't foresee? That certainly I can't foresee.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that we're going to see a dramatic demand of US dollars this year. I think the reason for that is because in most of the other kind of G7 countries, quote unquote, the European Union, major countries like Germany or, France and places like that, they've been doing universal basic income. And basically, whether you agree with it or not, it increases the monetary base of those currencies. So there's more euros or there's more yen or yuan or whatever that currency is, right? The dollar, right? They did $600, they had another $600. Now some of us got some forgivable PPP for our businesses, and even the SBA that some of our businesses got, that added credit actually to the system, and so did a lot of that PPP. So it actually increased leverage to the monetary base. And so the problem with that is we saw that 12 years ago. What happens? Dollars come due when the debt is mostly denominated in dollars. And when there's a fear of a lack of adequate growth to the price, and I mean, the cost of money is nothing, but you might even get money for it at this point. However, the real problem now is what is going to be my revenue prospect at this point? And that's across the board.
That's a big one.
Real estate might be one of the more fortuitous spaces, honestly, in terms of the world at large right now. I mean, that's an indicator of the illness, right? These are all symptoms of marketplaces no longer serving our needs. And thinking about it that way, I think, eliminates a lot of stress.
So Anthem, how do people reach you? What's the best way? I know you got a lot of you and I have talked a bunch, and you always blow my mind with the where your mind is and where things are heading. And so if people want to get a hold of you, ask you a question, take a look at your company, where's the best place to do that?
You know what? I mean, I don't normally do this, but for your viewers, text me. My cell is 702-569-3431. You can get me there.
That might be a problem for you. I was just letting you know.
No.
Okay.
I mean, come on. Anyone remotely associated is a pleasure. I stay curious, right? So teach me. I've got a lot to learn. So, I'm interested in what you have to say, and I'm interested in what, you're thinking. And, if there's any way that I can help you, I'm interested in that. So, that's the best way, I would say. And then after that, I would say Twitter, is a good way. If you want to Google some of my media stuff, you can go there. I mean, I've done stuff with like Maria Bartiromo, for example, or Emily Chang at Bloomberg West. They're a big tech show talking Bitcoin several years ago. My dad had a really cool article there about 5 years ago in Financial Times. If you go, My Name Hayek Gold, our company innovated the world's first gold token. Reuters covered it about 7 years ago, called INN Coin, as a promotion. So that's kind of how got us real deep into the space of public protocol. And my dad, Jim Blanchard, really that Hayek interview is awesome. So to kind of circle back there.
Actually, we're going to put that up on our show notes. We're going to do that for the show. And because I think that would be great for people to see. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad you highlighted it. So
there you guys go. Text Anthem Blanchard. I never thought I would hear that, but there you go. So Anthem, as always, man, thank you so much. Tell Cynthia hello. Give her a big hug for me. And we'll see you the next time.